Greetings, Earth enthusiasts. If you ever wondered about the incredible perspectives our planet has to offer from high above, you're in the right place. I am Dr. Clive Coetzee, and I'm thrilled to be your guide on this captivating journey into the world of remote sensing. Welcome. And please remember to like, subscribe to, and share this video. Thank you.
As you uh, know, we started on this land use, land cover image classification journey or mini series, whatever you want to call it. As I said in the previous two video tutorials, 180 and 181 is something that I've been or wanted to do for a long time. I've been playing around with this on and off for the last couple of months. So I thought it's time to formally put something down, because I do think it's quite interesting, especially with the increase in the tools, in the plugins in QGIS that's available. And I wanted to have a look and see, how do these plugins rate, or how do these methods rate? Because as I said, there seems to be a bit of a mini explosion when it comes to these things. So in the first one, 180, we talked about the tools that's available. And it seemed, well, in QGIS, there's at least 6 tools, plugins for another word. And each of those tools or plugins have on average about 4 methods. And in some cases, those methods have different parameters. So we went through the 6, and I basically presented just a quick overview of each of the 6, how they look, where do you find them, etc., etc. So that was in 180. Then in 181, we went in terms of the image, because you have the tools, you have the methods, you have the parameters, all good, but you need the daytime image. And we can use either Landsat or you can use Sentinel. In my case, I'm going to go for Sentinel specifically because of the spatial resolution. And so this video then deals with in the acquisition of the relevant Landsat Sentinel daytime image, where to get it, how to clip it, etc., etc. So that is in 181. Okay, so now you should have something that looks like this. You should have your region of interest, and you should have a stack image or a virtual raster image, where, and in my case, I'm displaying the true colors, meaning 432. You'll see there 432, and go to the Sentinel homepage on Google Earth Engine, and you'll see that 4 is the red band, 3, etc., etc., etc. So I've stacked all these bands. There's my individual bands from bands 1 to bands 12. And I've stacked those bands to create a virtual raster or a stack raster. And I use basically just my semi-automatic classification, where I've loaded the bands as a band set. And I just created used the create virtual raster and the stack. So I've created my virtual raster, and this will be the raster that we're going to generate our land use, land cover, or that we're going to do classification on. Now, it's advisable that you use at least the first 7 bands within Sentinel. But as I said, in my case, I've used all of the bands in Sentinel to generate my classification. But as I said, in some cases, I know some people only use bands 1 to 7. But I said I use all the bands. Okay, I use all the bands. By the way, thanks. We've seen a bit of an increase in subscribers, so keep it up, guys. Please, please, please. Let's press those buttons. Keep it up. Let's get momentum. Let's enjoy the journey together. And I said, also welcome to join me on Facebook. I'm also posting some stuff on Facebook. So let's keep the social media, let's keep the YouTube going. And yeah, it just helps me a lot, and I really appreciate that. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's go back. So you'll see with all of the methods, the classification methods, whether it is the semi-automatic classification plugin, whether it is Jetsaka, still trying to pronounce it, whether it's this classification tool, whether it is a supervised classifier, whether it's a neural networks classifier, or whether it is the white box machine learning classifiers, they all require a training data set or training raster, meaning, and it happens within Earth Engine as well, that you need to tell them, listen, this is what your classes are, meaning your land use, land cover classes, meaning water, veld, agriculture, mountains, forest, whatever your classes are. And that will basically relates to your region of interest. Because you may have a region of interest that doesn't have water, so that's obviously not going to be a class. You're going to have maybe a region of interest that doesn't have sand. That could be then another class. You may have lots of forest. That would be a class. I don't have forest in my region of interest, so that's not a class. So you need to have a good understanding of your region of interest to understand what the classes are. Now you don't have to go in detail and say, for example, this is a pond, this is a river, this is a lake. I mean, it's just water. So be careful. You can have subclasses, but don't dilute your classes to the point where it's going to mess up your classification. So think carefully about your class. Your classes should really be quite different. If they're fairly similar, like high forest and low forest, for example, or thick forest and thin forest, or pine forest versus gum forest, I mean, it's forest. So um, think carefully about your classes. Because it's important that you don't create duplicates or they are too close, because that's going to make classification difficult. It's also important that you don't miss obvious classes. So, and that, as I said, require you to understand your region of interest. So have a look at your region of interest. Have a look at your region of interest and then decide, okay, so as I said, please make sure that you understand your region of interest. So, for example, in my region of interest, I've got lots of agricultural land. So this is all agricultural land. Remember, this is that cloud cover. So I've got lots of agricultural land, which is basically all of this. Then I've got the two mountains. So there's two classes. Then I've got all this veld, which is natural veld. Okay, so that's a third class. Then I've got the sand. Sand is always an issue, so that's my fourth class. Then I've got a big river, that's my fifth class. And then I've got urban areas, so that's my sixth class. So in my case, understanding my region of interest, I think using those six classes would be more than sufficient. It's not too little in that I'll miss obvious classes. It's not too much in that I will duplicate classes. Okay, so I'm not going to have good veld and bad veld, or thick veld and thin veld. I'm not going to have green agriculture and less green agriculture, for lack of better terms. But I think you get the understanding. Or a river and a dam. I mean, it's all water. So I think that's going to, understanding my region of interest, that's the classes that I'm going to go with. Okay, but as I said, it really requires you to fully understand your region of interest. And then and then determining your classes. So I'm going to have six classes. So I'm going to have river. I'm going to have water, which is this part here. Okay. I'm going to have mountains, which is that part and this part. I'm going to have the veld, which is basically this part here. I'm going to have agriculture, which is basically this part here. I'm going to have sand, because there's some sand here. There's some sandy places here, and there's the beachfront, the beach area. So that's sand. And I'm going to have urban areas, because there's an urban area, and there's an urban area, there's an urban area. So, okay, so that's my six classes that I'm going to work with. Okay, so now, understanding my region of interest, having understanding of the classes that I'm going to go for, the next thing is to generate that training file, or the training data set. So that's the next one. Okay, so we're going to go to vector. Okay, sorry, before we go there, I suggest also load a satellite image. Okay, Esri satellite image or world image, same thing, or a Google Earth image. just to, if you're not sure, just to, for example, it just also gives you some idea of the classes. Okay, so I suggest to have that as a background. Okay, so that to me is I always use my daytime image with my Google Earth satellite image. But okay, obviously you need to understand that the time frames of these two images might be different. So on the daytime image, your Sentinel, it may indicate something, and in the Esri or Google Earth satellite, it may indicate another thing. It does happen specifically if in this case, my daytime is winter, and this one was summer. Obviously, they're seasonal, etc. So be careful, but I do use the two together when I generate my trainings, my samples, my training samples. Okay, so and now that I've got my satellite image and I've got my Sentinel image, let's go and develop my training sample, my training file, my training database, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so that's going to be important. So we're going to go to vector, to layer. We're going to say we're going to create a layer. We're going to create a shape file. Okay, so that's what we're going to create. We're going to create a shape file. So I'm going to left click on that, and it gives me this option of the new shape file. So I'll give it a name. So I'm going to go into, come on. Okay, find the place where your folder that you're working with. I'm working in this one, and I'm going to go to file classification, and I'm going to say training. I've already got a training file, so I'm going to call this training one. Okay, so I give it a name, a save, file encoding. Again, leave it as is. You can play around with this, but as I said, leave it as it is. No issue with that. And then geometry type, we're going to create polygons. If you want to do points, that's fine, but I think polygons is much better because it captures more of the dynamics of the underlying land use or land cover than just a point. Because remember, we're doing the spectral signatures. So you want to capture all the spectral signatures. Okay, I'm going to obviously convert it to the same coordinate reference system as all my other files. You'll see there it said 3857, 3857. So I do that. Now what I'm going to do here is we're going to add the fields. So I'm going to do a class. Let's call it double S. It's going to be text. IT, leave it as it, and add it to the field. So there's what I'm going to capture now. The class, and I'm going to give it a number. So water would say be number 1, felt will be number 2, etc., etc. Okay, so now I've set up my training file, my training database. Nothing more to do. Nope, everything seems fine. We've got it saved at the correct place. It's a polygon. It's got the right coordinate reference system. And I've added my window where I'm going to do the classification. Okay, press OK. And then it says, let me just move it up. And there it is. You'll see there's absolutely nothing. Okay, whether I open it or close it, there's absolutely nothing. Okay, so now it's up to us to start identifying and programming our classes. Let's make it nice and big. So let's start. I normally start with water, okay, because that's a straightforward one. And there's my water, my main water supply. So let's zoom into it. Let's zoom into it. Let's start from the beginning. Let's start from the beginning. You see this is brownish color here. Just to confirm, there's my water. Okay, so you see it's confirmed. I can zoom in and just remember I'm using the stack one. So now I'm gonna select my water. Now, I only want to select my water, so only these brown pixels that I'm gonna select. I don't want to select the black ones. What is the black ones here is these wetland areas. So I'm not gonna, in fact, yeah, I'm not gonna be concerned too much about these wetland areas. Come on. You'll see there. And the virtual raster gives you roughly the same, but my virtual raster is not, it's 1, 2, 3. So what we can do, for example, here is we can give it a false color, which is 2, 3, 4, I think. Let's look at how that looks. No, it looks roughly the same. No, let's leave the rest of let's go back to the stack. So I'm going to work with it. We can add this to the raster and give it a different color scheme. So let's, for example, say, make this, let's make this 7, 7, 4, 3. Let's see what that looks like. There we go. So my river is this green. You'll see there, it's same, and this red is the wetland areas. So we can use all of these images in partnership to actually define our classes. But anyway, what's important is that when you do your classes, be very, very specific. That we know the water is this brown, not this dark black. So when we capture our water training samples, then it shouldn't capture this black at all. Because obviously this black has a different signature, spectral signature than the brown. So, okay, so understanding that, I make sure that my training file is highlighted. I go to the toggle editing tool and I click on it, and then I'm going to get to this sign here, which means add the polygon or feature. Okay, so let me just go back again, show it again. So make sure my training file is highlighted. I just left click on it. So it's highlighted. I go to editing toggle. So I open up you see there, it's got this little pencil next to it. So that's important. And then you go to this where we're going to now generate our polygons, our sample polygons for each class. So I left click on it and you'll see it becomes now available. So now carefully, I basically just create my water polygon, my first water polygon, so that it only features and right click to close it. So as I said, what's important is that it only captures the water. There's no green, there's no black, because the green and the black is different classes. It is not water. So the water is this brownish color. And so when you create your polygons for class, please be very clear. You see there I'm almost too close. So that may be a problem there. But anyway, let's leave it is. So in this case, my water will be 1, ID 1, and then it will be water. And I press OK. And there it sits. I press on my little hand so that I can move. So I go to the next one. There's a nice one here as well. There's a nice one here as well. Just want to make sure. You'll see this is all water. Okay, so you can see there as well. So let's again make sure it's still toggled with that little pencil there next to it. So I'm going to go back to polygon. And I'm just going to make it nice and big. But again, be very careful that you only select the water, that you don't add different classes within my water. So it's still number 1 and water. Okay, make sure capital water and press OK. And there it sits. Now I press on the hand again to get rid of my polygon feature. Now if I want to have a look, I just right click on this training file, go open attribute, and you see there's the 2, water. Okay, so now let's just keep it on those 2. Now, the next thing that I want to do is the veld, because that's also quite big, is the veld. Okay, so I know that all of these purple, this is veld. So if I'm not sure, go and have a look. So you see there's veld. You see this is agriculture, this green is agriculture, but these colors here is all, this is all veld. And so let's go and have a look at, you'll see this is all veld. Um, this colors here, and there it also sits there. This colors here. So number 2. So still in toggle mode for my training, I go to add polygon feature and I go to the purple. And again, make sure that I don't include pixels that's not felt. So only pixels that's felt. That's okay. So now I make it number 2 and I say felt. Okay, field for a different word. It's natural vegetation. I can call it vegetation, just call it felt. Okay, so there it sits. I go to the hand to get rid of it and so you continue. So there's another one that I would choose. Yes. There's nothing this side. So I would think that you would need about, depending, like the river, there's only 2 places. I would do this one. I would do at least 5 samples of each class. At least 5 samples of each class. So there's veld. So that is my mountain. Then I'll go to agriculture and I'll repeat the process. I'll keep on repeating the process. So if I have 6 classes, I'll do at least 5 samples, training samples for each class. So therefore, I would in general have about 30 samples. There's my urban area, so which is this bluish color and this cayenne color. So I would do both just to confirm. You'll see that that is and that. There is it in false color and there it is in true color. So again, I would, but again, be very careful. So for example, make sure it's still there. Select your polygon feature. And remember, we're not going to do the green. Something to that effect. So let's make this number 3 and I'll call it urban. And I press OK and there it sits. Okay, so let's click the hand. And I will continue. So I will find my other urban areas, which is this particular area. And I'll do the same there. There's agricultural areas. There's my mountains. Then I'll find the sandy patches. And I will do the sandy patches, which is this white areas. I'll do the sandy patches. And that's basically that. And then once you're done, you just click back on this pixel and a pencil and say save. Now, let's unhide it. This is what I've got so far. And what I've basically, okay, so my completed one, if I go now and open attribute table, you'll see there's water. There's 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. Veld 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Mountain 1, 2, 3, 4. Farming 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Urban 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then sand 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So in total, I've got 39 training samples. Again, how many training samples of each class, that's really up to you. The more the merrier. So more training samples, the better in general, not always the case, but in general. But also make sure that your training samples cover your whole region of interest. So don't just focus on a particular part. Have a fairly equal distribution of your training samples within your region of interest. Now, I don't have agriculture this side, so obviously agriculture is only on that side. And this side I've got veld. There we go. So if I just open it up, farming is green. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So water is blue. There it is. Water is blue. You'll see there's 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So there's 6 water. So you'll see there. There's my water. It's around that. My farming is green. And basically all I did with this is I just went to open the properties, and I go to categorized. I go to class, and I say classify. And then I just change the colors. Okay, so symbology. Okay, so let me go. So you right click on your training to activate it. Go to properties. Within properties, go to symbology. And remember, symbology, you can have single symbol, graduated, etc. I just go for categorized, and then obviously the class. The ID, you can do ID as well. It's not an issue, but class has the name of it. ID will only give you 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you may then have to define what one means. So just go class, and then just classify, and then it will list the classes, and then you must just do the colors. Now the colors are really up to you. I'll just use these colors. That's my choice. It's really up to you. And there it's it. So veld, you'll see there's veld. Veld is located. I didn't just do the veld here. I also included veld on this side. I should have maybe included some veld here as well. You can do that as well. I can just right click here, activate the file, and then go to the pencil, add it, and I can again just click on my add polygon feature, and I can include more veld if needed. Mountains, there's my 3 mountains. There's my agriculture. There's the red is my urban. So there's my training file. Again, we can delete some of these if you find that there's overlap, meaning you didn't do it properly. So for example, this one also includes, let's say, veld. We can delete it. So you can go to training. You can go to open attribute table, and you can delete stuff here. You can just activate the table, and you can just basically delete this, cut it, cut selected row, delete it if you want to. So if you find that, don't do it. If you find that any of these particular training samples are not very good, meaning there's overlap between it and another class, because remember the idea behind this is to create training samples that have unique spectral signatures for that specific class. So you don't want to create a training sample for a specific class that share or overlap spectral signature with another class, because then your classification is going to be not good. And this is the potential problem with having sand and having urban areas, is that there's potential overlap. So we'll have to be careful, but this will become evident or clearer when we do the classifications itself. When we do the classification itself, we'll see where there's overlap. If there's overlap, we'll have to find those training samples where there's overlap, delete it and redo it so that we create unique spectral signatures for each class. Okay. So there's a whole lot of, let's call science behind creating this training. You have to take a lot of care in this, because the more accurate, the more relevant your training samples is for the different classes, the more accurate your classification will be. So this is very important. So take time, and it does take a bit of time. It is not the nicest thing to do. It's a bit frustrating, but it's something that you have to do. And I said, I use all the tools in my toolbox. So for example, there's sand. So make sure that the sand doesn't cover these other spectral signature. To make sure that it's sand, I can use, you'll see there, if I use this classification, this display 743, the false color, I'm still unique. And just to confirm that, there it sits. Now you see this is where the satellite image maybe a little different than the Sentinel image. Sentinel image suggests it's not really sand, it's more felt, but as I said, it could be because there's different, it's time delays, different periods that these things have been captured. So I use these three in combination to make sure that when I generate my training samples through these polygons, that I only capture the spectral signatures of that specific class. And there's no overlaps, because if this also included this part, then when the classification will then the that would not know whether is this now sand or is this felt, because this is felt. Okay, so that's why it's so important that you take great care when you generate your training samples. When you generate your training samples, to make sure you have sufficient training samples, so more is better. Training sample must be unique, i.e. that classes must only capture the spectral signatures of that class. Third, have it equally distributed throughout your region of interest so that it's representative. So all those things you need to make sure that's in place for this training sample or for this training file. Okay, and use all the tools that you have available, understanding the limitations of each of these tools. Okay, so that's basically how you create. Now we're going to do we're going to generate different training samples or training files, and then we're going to run it through um, different tools, and then we can see which training sample delivers better results than other training samples. So the training sample that you're going to use must never be static. It must be dynamic. You must be willing to adapt it, to change it, to amend it, to redo it, etc. Because that's really, I would think, 90% of the success of your land use land cover classification is this training sample. Okay, so we have now a training sample. Please remember to save. We have a training file or training data set that we're going to use. Now, this training data set we're going to use in Zseka. We're going to use in Zseka. We're going to use in classification tool, and we're going to use in supervised classification as is. No problem. So they use the same training file. So those three would use the training sample. The SCP doc, the semi-automatic classification, it requires its own training file. So we're going to do exactly what we've done now, but within the plugin itself, so that it creates its own training file. Okay, so we're just going to duplicate what we've done here. And then within the neural networks, basically we're going to take this training file and we're going to convert it into a raster. Because if you open it, it's looking for the training as a raster image. Okay, but I said it's so important that the image file and your training image, your image and your training image be exactly the same extent. And we're going to go through that as well. If it's not a same extent, I'll show you, it just kicks you out. And then we do our white box, then we're going to go back to this training file. So this training file we can use in 4 of the methods. And we're going to use the same training file, but in different format for the SCP, for semi-automatic classification. It requires a SCP doc. It's called .scp, and the neural network we're going to convert into a raster. So per definition, this training file can be used in all 6 of them. Slight different variations, but in all 6 of them, we're just going to duplicate it or change it to a different format. Okay, so that's a training file or your training image or your training data set. It consists of your classes, your land use land cover classes, and then training samples for each of those land use land cover classes. It is generated through QGIS as a vector file and as polygons. Now we can use a combination. So for example, we could have said, when we said create a layer, create a shapefile, we could have said points as well. We could have used the point one, but I said point one. Yeah, yeah, use it, try and see if it works. But the problem with points is you'll have to have many, many points. Anyway, you can do points as well in the training file rather than polygons or lines. You can do that as well. Point is you need a training file. And my view is that polygon training file is the best version rather than a point or line, etc., etc. Much more accurate. So, not overemphasizing the same thing over and over again. The success of your classification is pretty much dependent on your training file. You mess up this, your classification is going to be rubbish. So spend the time, spend the effort. I know it's not always fun, not always the nicest thing. It's time consuming, but this is what's going to make or break your classification. And understand your region of interest. Understand your region of interest, and so that you can optimize your classes. Okay, so without deliberating the point, we have now our classification methods, our classification tools. Let me put it this way. Our classification tools. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's all 6 classification methods or tools. In each of these tools, there's different methods. K-means, supervised, random forest, etc., etc. And that some of them have their own parameters. And as I said, we're going to focus not just on pixel-based, spectral signature-based classification. We're also going to look at object-based classification. So we're going to do both types of classification. Spectral signature-based classification or pixel-based. And the other one is object-based. You'll see as we go along, you'll see the difference between the two. And as I said, we're going to then have a, call it an inventory of classification images, classified images. And then we're going to do accuracy assessments for each one, or try to do accuracy assessments for each one and see, and then rank them. So that's where we're going to. Okay. Still okay? It's interesting, I think. Because to a large degree, these daytime images by themselves is of little use, except for, showing what's happening. But what we want to get is that classification, and that's what's important. Okay. So yeah, thank you. That's number 3 of the series done and dusted. And look forward to the next one. As I said, there's lots to come because you can by yourself see there's lots of these things that we're going to do. And stay tuned, more to come. Thanks for your support. Much appreciate your kind comments, your feedback, your thank you notes, etc., etc. It does really mean a lot. It keeps the channel open. It keeps the channel going. So yeah, thank you. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. And with that, I'll see you on the other side.